Welcome into the Russ Joy Show. I'm Russ Joy. You figured that out because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. Oh boy. Happy Friday, everybody. Don't expect a very long show today. I just found out that I have a dentist appointment. Uh-oh. Get these pearly whites all gussied up, for, you gotta make sure dental health is important. Otherwise, you get that terrible gum disease known as gingivitis. Welcome into the show. It's a huge week. Obviously, a massive weekend. Why? Because your team, your town, your Philadelphia Eagles are going into the wild card round, taking on a Green Bay Packers team that apparently everyone, well, not everyone, but a lot of the national media pundits believe will pull off an upset. Now I am left with many questions on this fine morning, including what happened to all of the Jalen Hurts fearmongers, all the people who tried to sound the alarms, raise the flags, put the flags at half-mast. They were all worried about, Jalen's not practicing. I guess it means we're screwed. We have no chance. We're all going to die. And, your friendly local neighborhood Russ Joy said what to you the other day? Said, hey, he can't clear concussion protocol until he practices on Wednesday. And I'm gonna throw this out here real quick because you've probably seen this by now, but just in case you haven't, I don't know if you noticed this or not, but the young man has been out on the field the last few days practicing. Here's a not even a Zapruder film. This is from Dave Zangaro. There's Jalen Hurts out there on the field, Lincoln Financial Field. He's been participating in practices. I know a lot of people were worried, and I get it. And I know that a lot of what happens in this game could, in fact, hinge on whether or not Jalen Hurts plays. And if Jalen Hurts is able to be at 100% and yada, yada, yada. Guys, he's going to play. It's going to happen. And we can all take a deep freaking breath and move on with our day. I can't believe the amount of nonsense that we've had to endure this week around whether or not he was going to play and what it was going to mean. Now, I could take you back to a day ago, almost 24 hours ago, where Adam Schefter reported over on Get Up that Jalen Hurts is still technically in concussion protocol, but it would appear as though we're getting closer and closer. Now, if something were to change between now and Sunday, all right. But as of right now, no. The man is going to play, and the man is probably going to show out. And by the time we reconvene on Monday morning at 8:30 a.m. live on YouTube, X, and Facebook, we will likely be talking about a big win. A big win by the Birds. The Birds getting a big win out there. That's what we'll probably be talking about, okay? All right, so listen. We are going to break down the Eagles game. We're going to break down everything that I expect to have happen this weekend. And by the way, for those of you who like hockey, you're getting one of the marquee matchups, at least in terms of hatred. It goes down this weekend, goes down this Saturday night, as none other than Quitter Gauthier returns to Philadelphia, the team that he decided he didn't want to play for and forced to trade out of. Quitter Gauthier and the Anaheim Ducks will be in town, taking on your team, your town, your Philadelphia Flyers. We're going to get there for at least a little bit today as well. But before we get there, and before we start breaking down this Eagles-Packers game and have a couple of keys and things to keep an eye on, we're going to go out to the comments. JH says, go Birds. Fuck the Ducks. JH also says, working out my voice today for tomorrow's booing. Good on you. Good on you, JH. Gauthier has no idea what he's in store for. No idea. Nico says, go Birds! JH also says, it's nice that we'll have someone to boo whenever they touch the puck because Crosby's not going to be around forever. I think that there's also kind of an acknowledgement, whether or not Flyers fans want to admit this or not. There's a somewhat of an acknowledgement at this point that, Crosby will go down as one of the all-time greats. And even though there were very heated moments and although there were some real rivalry games, that rivalry has effectively died. The Battle of the Keystone State practically means nothing at this point. And you can acknowledge the fact that Crosby ended up being one of the best, not only Penguins of all time, he was certainly the best player of his generation. And that's saying something, too, because Alex Ovechkin's 28 goals away from breaking Gretzky's all-time goal record, and those guys went 1-2. You talk about a stacked top 2 of a draft in any league in the history of any North American sport. That's the one. So I think that people still hate Crosby, but I think there's now an acknowledgement, right? There's at least a little bit of an acknowledgement that Crosby's pretty freaking great. Gauthier, though, not great yet. Could end up being great. Could make the Flyers look really dumb for trading him for Jamie Drysdale, who looks like absolute dog shit. We might get to last night's game a little bit here on the show, but I do want to make sure that we focus a little bit here on the Eagles as well. JH asks, is that a little rust on your desk? I don't think I've noticed that before. Yeah, my wife got me this for Christmas. I never wanted a Funko before, but let me try to center it. Let me see if I can remote control the camera. There you go. So he's got a coffee in one hand and the phone in the other. Got the rust stash. She nailed it. She did a nice job there. All right. Can I be honest with you? I am excited about this weekend. I am more excited than anything to get the conversation around Jalen Hurts and concussion protocol out of the way. Nico says over on YouTube, rest in peace, Penn State. Can I tell you that, in watching the Orange Bowl, I was trolling intern Andrew. So if you watch the Press Row show, you have an idea how this works. Anytime intern Andrew has to watch Penn State and either myself or Bundy or Ant are around, we troll intern Andrew the whole time. And I'm pretty sure that this year Penn State didn't have a single win when any of us were together. Last night's game, I don't like Notre Dame. I don't actively cheer for Penn State like I did when I was a kid. But I would have been fine with Penn State winning. The end of that game was just catastrophic. Penn State has the lead. They blow the lead. They get the ball back. 2.5 minutes or whatever left? No, it was less than that because that was what Notre Dame got it with 2.5. Penn State gets the ball back. Drew Aller throws the ball while getting hit across the middle of the field. On commentary, they'd said, well, Drew Aller never turns the ball over, and he makes all the right decisions, and you got to go for it and be aggressive, and all that bullshit, right? So it's the commentator's jinx. It absolutely played out 100%. And then Notre Dame gets the ball. They drive down a short field. They get the field goal. That puts them up. Penn State gets the ball back with 8 seconds left. Aller throws the ball out of bounds with 4 seconds left. And then they tried the hook and ladder, multilateral play. It gets back to Drew Aller, who instead of looking downfield to chuck it deep, throws it slightly over the line of scrimmage to the left, and it goes out of bounds. And that was the end of Penn State's season. I believe that means that James Franklin is now 1-15 all time as Penn State coach against top 10 teams in the nation. Does that sound about right? That might not be the exact stat, but we're going to say that it is. Because fact-checking this morning, I have had no coffee because I have to go to the dentist. My brain's a little bit foggy. Not a great loss for Penn State. I can't even pin that loss on James Franklin, though. Usually there are 2 or 3 really stupid, boneheaded decisions that James Franklin makes in the course of a game. And last night, I didn't even feel like that was the case. Last night, I legitimately felt like Drew Aller cost them that game because it was a terrible decision. Why you're throwing in that situation, I don't know. If you're Aller, just take the sack. There's no reason to throw it across the middle of the field. A boneheaded play. I'll also point out, Penn State had 2 interceptions that got called back. Aller got picked twice. And they both got called back. I think both for pass interference, or one was for a hold. I think the first one in the end zone was for a hold. If a ref misses one of those calls, it's probably not even that close down the stretch. So now you have Notre Dame taking on the winner of Texas and Ohio State. They play in the Cotton Bowl tonight. You can let me know in the comments if you have a preference either way. I don't care. Probably Texas. I don't like Ohio State. So Texas. Texas Notre Dame, does that get anybody's juices flowing for the national championship game? I'm not so sure. Maybe somebody would be excited. I don't know. Ford checks in, says, I said it last night when Penn State was winning the game. Check my tweets. They will lose the game. It'll be tight, but they will F it up. And shared the Franklin record in big games, and he strikes again. I really don't think that was James Franklin's fault last night. I mean, I'm sure somebody can point to a couple of decisions somewhere, but I really think that Aller screwed it up. Jamie says, I wish I was surprised by the ending by Drew Aller, but I'm not. C-Mac in all caps. Notre Dame crushes Andrew Solid. This is how you start the show. Ha 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 ha. Yeah, poor intern Andrew. I did. Landris asks, have we ordered a wellness check for intern Andrew this morning? Yeah, we checked on him last night. And he said, we were making the joke about how he's spoiled games for Bundy before. And so I'm like, I'm sorry, intern. And he goes, why? What happened? I have the game on DVR. He wasn't serious. He's probably crying this morning. Though, if you watch the Press Row show, you know that intern Andrew got his second grade project that had had John LeClaire's picture in it. And LeClaire autographed it and left him a message, which I will not disclose here unless intern Andrew wants to put it on the record. But LeClaire left him a nice message in his second grade project that he's legitimately carried around in his backpack to every Snow the Goalie and the Press Row show for over a year on the hopes that he would get to show it to John LeClaire, kind of as a joke. But it was a beautiful moment. Chase B checks in over on YouTube, says, my hate for Crosby will never fade. I think it has faded for a lot of people. Chase, you can keep that hatred in your heart. And says, my hate for Cutter won't ever fade. Yeah, I think that Gauthier is going to end up being more hated than Crosby when it's all said and done. That might be a little bit too bold. Maybe. Nico says, Drew Aller, you are a New York Giant. Oh, God. Henry 3000 says, good morning, brother. Good morning, Henry 3000. Jamie Rose says, my patience with Danny B is gone, not because they're a terrible team, but because he refuses to take any swings at all to help the quote-unquote rebuild. Maybe we'll get there in a little bit when we get to the Flyers. Henry 3000 says, the Ohio State will take it. They might. If I had to pick between Ohio State and Notre Dame, I don't know who I'd root for. Do I let them play the Catholic card on me? Does the Catholic guilt beat me down where I then have to cheer for Notre Dame? Yeah, I don't like Ohio State. I guess I would have to cheer for Notre Dame. Or I could just choose that everybody has fun and the real winners are the fans. Maybe. I don't know. Let's see. Chase B says, corner slipping, 50-yard touchdown. QB throws an errant pass. Notre Dame wins pretty easily. Henry 3000 says, the Allard interception was so bad, kid needs to let some chin hair grow in. Allison checks in with a good morning. All right, looks like we have a bunch of back and forths going on about that game last night. But we are going to get back to a whole lot of things. Now, I want to make sure, because we're, like I mentioned at the top of the show, it's going to be a little bit of a shorter one because I just realized I have a dentist appointment. God. Does anybody like going to the... I like my dentist. In fairness, my dentist is great. Maybe she should sponsor the show. Perhaps I'll have to have a conversation today. But she does a great job. My wife is, like, definitely afraid of the dentist because of a bad dentist in her past that, like, caused her significant pain during a root canal. She likes our dentist. We have great dentists, fantastic dentists. But I don't love going to the dentist, especially when there's as much work as I have to do today, and I have this show, and I want to do due diligence here and make sure that I'm living up to the hype of the Russ Joy Show on a Friday morning. I also just don't like the scrapey sounds when they do the in between the teeth. I don't like that, all right? C-Mac is right here, though, says you're from Schuylkill County. Be lucky you have teeth. That is true. Yeah. If the anthracite doesn't get you, the meth does. I don't know, C-Mac, let me know. How prevalent is meth up in Skook these days? I really don't know. I don't know what the drug of choice is in Schuylkill County anymore. I never engaged in it, but I'm just kind of interested now. What are people doing? Typically, whatever starts in Schuylkill County, pretty way down the line is eventually what gets adopted everywhere else. So, like, if C-Mac says that people are, like, huffing flaming hairspray and then downing, like, 2 NyQuil, that'll be the thing that people are going to start doing in the Philadelphia area probably by, like, August. So I'll leave it to C-Mac to be our resident expert in Schuylkill County culture. Okay. Henry 3000 says, dentist is a scam. You can take care of your own mouth yourself. I've seen people with this theory. I don't know how I feel about it. I'm okay. I'll keep buying into big dentistry. All right, anyway, let's get to this weekend. I mentioned at the start of the show that one of the things I'm looking the most forward to is the end of what's going to happen with Jalen Hurts? Is he going to play? What does it mean for the Eagles? All this bullshit. Like, it's been driving me nuts. And I went for a goosey gander because all I could wonder is where do the national media pundits land right now, whether Hurts is healthy or not? What do they think about the likelihood of the Eagles winning at home? Now, remember, there's supposed to be a snowstorm. Now, I haven't looked in a while. I'm actually going to, let's do this in real time. There's supposed to be a snowstorm, or at least there was supposed to be a snowstorm on Saturday. And now I'm genuinely interested in finding out what kind of precipitation we're getting. Are we getting ice? Are we getting snow? Oh, now it says there's nothing on Saturday, but Sunday. Hold on. It thinks I'm in Houston, Texas. I am not in Houston, Texas. Apparently, that's the last time I looked at weather.com. I was like, I don't think that's right, weather.com. Hold on a second. Here we go. In Philadelphia tomorrow, 18% chance of precipitation. It looks like that has mostly gone away. We're getting some snow tonight, Friday night. But okay, that takes that variable out. Now, I want to go over to what some of the national media had to say about Jalen Hurts and about the Eagles, okay? Because the Eagles have been hovering around a 4.5-point favorite on Sunday. They put together an incredible winning streak. They beat Green Bay in the Brazil game. Green Bay is kind of beaten up, especially at wideout. One would think that with home field advantage and a strong Eagles team that has been one of, if not the best team in the NFC all year, it stands to reason that the Eagles should be a 4.5-point favorite. But, well, I'll tell you what. There's one person at FS1 who does not believe that the Eagles are going to win this game. It's not Emmanuel Acho, and it's not Joy Taylor. But it is somebody else who works at that station. And we're going to bring him up. I want you to see if you can identify him by his voice. Remember, this was a guy who once was on ESPN, and I forget what happened there, but he ended up off, and now he's kind of on the land of misfit toys at FS1. Here's this guy.
Do you think Philly deserves to be almost 5-point favorites?
No. They should be 3-point favorites.
Wow. That's a bold take by Chris Broussard. They should be 3-point favorites. Whew.
I think Green Bay is going to win this game. But Philly, look, regardless of what the reports were about yesterday, Jalen Hurts hasn't played in a month. And I would think he's not a great passer when he's in rhythm.
Wow.
And so, as far as, over the course of a season. So I think
bold.
He's going to be rusty.
So, okay, hold on a second. So he says the Eagles should only be a 3-point favorite, but then also says the Eagles are going to lose this game and that Jalen Hurts isn't a good passer even when he's in rhythm. Wow, okay. Very interesting. All right, let's keep going.
And Green Bay's playing with house money. Nobody expects them to win. They're still the
Well, one person expects him to win, and his name is Chris Broussard. Buddy, you just said that you think that the Packers are going to win the game. So what does that mean? Nobody. Don't speak in absolutes. You can't do that. You just contradicted yourself, Chris. What are you doing? What are you doing? All right, let's go.
Youngest team in the playoffs, youngest team in the league. So they're coming out there free. And A.J. Brown, is he going to be chirping? We talked about this yesterday. Is he going to be chirping to Jalen to get him the ball?
All right, tired narrative. I thought we have already gotten past that, but okay. Chris Broussard is now playing the greatest hits of things that have given Eagles fans heartburn this year. All right. Are we going to have that the Eagles tempted the gods of football by not playing Saquon Barkley? Are we going to talk about Saquon Barkley's hamstring or something? Well, let's see. I honestly haven't watched this the whole way through, so your guess is as good as mine.
So I just think that Green Bay, I feel good about their chances of winning this. And I feel like all the pressure is on Philadelphia because they are S-Bob, and they better win this game or they have a new coach.
Yeah.
Whoa! Now we got the coach. Wow. Listen, I said we're playing a bunch of the greatest hits. He kind of went in reverse order there a little bit. Oh, Jalen Hurts isn't a very good passer, even when he's in rhythm. That was one of the later season critiques. And then if we go back chronologically, there was the A.J. Brown chirping, the passing comment post-game. That was a few weeks prior, okay? And then he wraps it up with a bow by saying, might have a new coach. So I guess we've gone now back to the bye week. Listen, Chase B's right. He hit them all. I don't know if he missed any narratives from this season. except for maybe Saquon. He could have said, oh, I don't know. The Eagles' demeanor, their overall morale might be hurt because they didn't go after the rushing record. All right, well, Chris Broussard misses out on that one. All right. Hey, good on you, fella. You had a nice little run there. Let's keep going.
I disagree that they're playing with house money now. As soon as you pay your quarterback what you paid your quarterback, it stops being house money. That comes with expectations, and you better perform. I'm fine with the line where it is. Philly was 8-1 at home. When you look at it, Nick Sirianni's undefeated after a bye, and really last week was a bye. So
oh, look at Mancini coming up with some actual stats. Sitting back, hanging out, remembering his not-so-successful Jets tenure, but he's got some facts. He's brought some actual facts to a discussion on FS1. This is new. Now, you can actually see Chris Broussard having a meltdown. His brain is actually frying in the moment. Oh, I didn't know we were bringing numbers today. I didn't know we were bringing actual historical trends and not just anecdotal, personal narrative bullshit. Okay. Keep going, fella. Plus, I like the purple tie. It's a little bit bent there, but we'll rock with it.
they have that benefit as well. And then going into this, Philly's won 3 in a row, and then Green Bay's lost. They don't have the momentum. Green Bay doesn't have the momentum like they had last year. And I think collectively, Philly is a much not a much sounder team, but a sound enough team comparatively to merit the extra point that you normally get for a home playoff.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what exactly he's talking about at the end. This kind of felt like, you know how when you have to do a report in school, you have a project to do, and like your teacher says you have to start this in class, and they are hawkish over you. So you actually do get a strong start. And you get like the first quarter of the project done in class. And then the teacher eventually says, all right, you're going to like go finish the rest of this at home, bring it back in a week or whatever. And when you show back up, it's like that meme of like the beautifully drawn horse, right? And it's like in 3 or 4 parts, and it gets progressively worse over each piece. And by the end, it's just a stick figure horse going like that's what just happened there. That's what just happened with his argument. It started very strong. It was a well-shaded 3D interpretation of a horse's ass, and then it got a little bit worse. And by the end, what exactly does that mean? The Eagles aren't really that much of a more sound team than the Packers. What does that mean? This is a team that 2 years ago made a Super Bowl. It is a team that last year collapsed down the stretch. It is a team that had significant questions in week 5 in the bye week that had people like me saying, is this coach really the answer? And I said at the time, if they continue to go with Sirianni, the belief that I had at the time was that the talent is still going to be able to win out. The talent is still going to be able to win in spite of the head coach. I do think Sirianni has earned some respect back, and I do think that Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio over the course of the season got to learn their personnel better and have done a masterful job of taking this team to the kind of success that it had, especially on a long win streak, and then bouncing back and ending the season strong. So, okay. Interesting. Chris Broussard, though, that was horrific. Okay. I'm going to go over here to the comments really quick. And Ford is right. Ford is right to call this out. He said, to be fair, you went on a rant about Sirianni early in the season. I did. Now, I do still have the question, like, what is it exactly that Nick Sirianni does? Because he he apparently doesn't touch special teams, defense, and then offense, it seemed like he had been meddling. Kellen Moore, like, here's what we're going to learn. And this is the problem, okay? Kellen Moore is going to be a highly sought-after name in the head coaching market. Don't be surprised if he has even more interviews between now and whenever the Eagles' playoff run ends, hopefully with a parade down Broad Street. But Kellen Moore will be a wanted name among a ton of teams that need a head coach. And if I'm the Eagles, I'm probably going to try to do whatever it takes to keep him here. Shy of like naming him associate head coach. This team needs consistency at an offensive coordinator. That to me is like the biggest concern. If you remember, post Foles, right? Offensive coordinator position went up and down. Even with this team, they lost Shane Steichen. They put, what the hell was his name? I've now lost the guy's name. Brian Mitchell. They had him in place. That didn't work. He gets jettisoned. They bring in Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore is supposed to be this great offensive mind. There have been some hit and miss moments, but overall, it seems like the in-game adjustments that this Eagles offense makes work. I think it's important, at least with Jalen Hurts and with this offense, like, no matter what you think about the passing game, no matter whether or not you agree that Jalen Hurts is a great passing quarterback, a mediocre passing quarterback, a perfectly acceptable one, a less than average one, this team still put together an offense that had the leading rusher and a guy who, like, had it not been for the fact that the final game of the season was meaningless, good chance would have broken the single season rushing record. That is one hell of an offense. I don't care what you think about the status of the passing game, okay? It's undeniable that Kellen Moore had a significant impact on this offense. Obviously, Saquon Barkley on the field had a massive influence on it as well. But this offense looked really good for the majority of the season. Did they have their ups and downs? They did. Was there some potential strife internally about getting A.J. Brown and or Devontae Smith involved in games? Yes. Do I think that they're going to have some rust this weekend? I do think that there is a possibility that there will be rust. I do. Jalen Hurts, to the point of the panel, yes, he hasn't played in a month. No, that's not ideal. You have home field advantage. You have the best running back in football. You have probably the best offensive line in football. You have a defense that has now not only been a shutdown defensive unit for almost all of the regular season, but has now also figured out how to force turnovers. I like the Eagles in this game significantly. I think I said on Wednesday I wouldn't be surprised if this is a double-digit win for the Eagles. If something were to change, if Hurts somehow doesn't suit up for this game, then I think it's a lot closer. Could be like a 3-point game, could be a 4-point game. But overall, like, I still think the Eagles, no matter what, are able to walk away with a win. And then you start getting into those scenarios of, all right, what does the rest of the playoffs look like? Was it a bigger problem than expected that the Eagles didn't get the number 1 seed? Will home field advantage come into play? We can get there when we get there. But for now, I think that the Eagles are in a good shape. I really do. I'm going to go out to the comments, and I'm glad that Chase B corrected me. It was Brian Johnson, not Brian Mitchell. Brian Mitchell was a player for the Eagles who then went to the Commanders. Brian Johnson. Yes, he was so bad that we even forgot his name. I just tried to expunge his name from my brain. Okay. Let's see. I don't know which one that was. Oh, there we go. Okay, that was a totally different thing. Chase B says he seems to be amazing as a passing coordinator about Kellen Moore. I think there's a lot of truth to it. We'll see. Like, what I'm interested in seeing is we know that when teams get from the regular season to the playoffs, they tend to find a better balance. And teams that even haven't been leaning as much on the rushing game, they do start to try to incorporate it more. When you have a team that was as dominant in the trenches as the Eagles and had a Saquon Barkley lead the league in rushing and has a quarterback coming back off a concussion and probably isn't going to want to put him or jeopardize him, put him in situations where he might take a bad hit, they'll probably lean more on Saquon Barkley early in this game than you would expect. I mean, how many times have we seen a game this season where the Eagles come out for their first drive, it's 3 passes. They come out for the second drive, it's like 1 rush, then 2 more passes, and you go, hey, guys, like, you have Saquon Barkley. You remember that, right? And then we get very frustrated, right? The scripted plays, the first 15 plays, the scripted plays, where it feels like there are no adjustments being made, which was maybe part of the reason that the Eagles struggled as much as they did in the first quarter of games this season. I fully expect them to lean heavily into Saquon early in this game. And at the same time, I would expect that Green Bay is going to expect the same thing. So that battle in the trenches in the first quarter is really going to give you an idea what the rest of the game is going to look like. If the Eagles' offensive line is able to dominate up front by virtue of them being healthy, well-rested after taking a week off, well, then it portends a very good scenario for the Eagles. If the Eagles win the battle in the trenches on both sides of the ball in the first quarter, even through the first half, you can pretty much punch their ticket into the next round of the playoffs. If Green Bay starts getting a better jump, if they're stacking the box, if Hurts isn't able to make quick decisions, and they can't get anything going, and the rushing attack gets stymied, then all of a sudden, panic probably does start to set in. I'm going to go back over here. Ford says, here's a narrative, a fake one, but for the talking heads, do you bring in Tanner if Jalen starts slow? Tanner McKee, no. You don't. Because just conceptually, if Jalen Hurts were to struggle early in this game, who benefits by them taking the franchise quarterback that they have a ton of money invested in? Who benefits if you pull him to put in the third string quarterback? So we're skipping Kenny Pickett altogether. You can't put either of those guys in unless Jalen Hurts starts showing signs of a concussion, in which case you obviously have to, but that's what the independent neurologist on the sidelines is for. Chase B says if Jalen starts turning the ball over, then yes. I just can't imagine that. Seriously, I can't. Chase also says if Jalen is healthy, they won't put McKee in, but I wouldn't mess around with a concussion. You know how it messes with you. Connor Allen says, will Covey ever return punts again? If the gods be good, then no. I'd actually be happy if I'd never had to watch Britton Covey ever return another punt. Ever. Totally fine with him. Never. No, thank you. No, thank you. Chase B mentions that a concussion is not like a shoulder injury, like 22 or ankle injuries Mahomes always pushes through. It's pain tolerance. If Jalen seems to be fully out of it, you can't push that. I agree with that. And then Len DeJoseph wraps up. The Eagles talk here says, as long as the defense does its job, they should be fine, as long as Jalen doesn't turn the ball over. And that, I guess, is where the real crux of the game is. So let's kind of fully synthesize this into the keys to winning the game if you're the Eagles. The Eagles have to win the battle in the trenches. That is a non-negotiable. Offensively, they have to create holes for Saquon. They have to get that running game started early. Jalen Hurts has to make quick decisions. As long as they're able to do that, they will put up 28-plus points against this Packers defense, and that should be enough for them to win. Now, defensively, they also need to win the battle in the trenches because if they're able to get pressure on Jordan Love, who has a depleted wide receiving core, all of a sudden, that defensive line can then start to hone in on stopping Josh Jacobs. And if you're able to stop Josh Jacobs, there's not a whole lot going on with that Green Bay offense. So to me, it's battle in the trenches. It's can you get Jalen Hurts to make quick decisions, and can you get Saquon Barkley in rhythm? If you do 2 out of those 3 things, you win the game. If you do all 3 of those things, you win this game by double digits. It would be nice to see if the Eagles' defense is able to keep up their ways of forcing turnovers as well. That has been such an added benefit. And I know that it seems really simple, right? Of course you want your defense to force turnovers. But that, give this offense even more possessions. The thing that I want to see from the Eagles this postseason, right? Because I am of the belief they're going to make a deep run. I want to see if this Eagles team can get out to an early lead and put their foot on the throat of the opposition. That is one thing that this team struggled with to some extent. And it's something that came back to bite them when they lost a few weeks ago. That was obviously the game that Jalen went out. But I brought up the point at the time that if Kenny Pickett had been able to get you another touchdown in that first half, you probably put Washington out of their misery. You go on to win that game. They didn't do it in that one. They lost the game. It started a whole chorus of dissent. I want to see if this Eagles team can actually get off to a hotter start in the first quarter of games, if they can adjust early, and if they can put this game out of reach. The Packers are a good team. The Packers are not an elite team. The Packers are a perfectly respectable group. They have a good quarterback. If they had a healthy wide receiving core, I would have a lot more fear. Jacobs is a very good running back. But the Packers don't scare me as a team that becomes like a legitimate threat to win the NFC. The Eagles should be a team that could either win or at least end up in the NFC Championship game. I'm fairly confident in this weekend. Unless something goes wrong with Jalen Hurts. And then in that case, it's going to be a lot closer than any of us want. Okay. Ford asks, to the people, does anyone here think the Eagles will win the conference? I do. I think there's a very good chance the Eagles make it to the Super Bowl. But it all starts on Sunday. And as we always say, just go out and win this game. We're only focused on this week. You take it 1 week at a time. Peter says, smash that like button. I don't know how many likes are on the video right now. Don't forget, if you're over on the Joy Media YouTube account instead of the Russ Joy Show one, you can like the video, share the video, subscribe over on Joy Media. But I'd say, come on over to the Russ Joy Show. That's where a lot of the commenters are. That's where most of them live during the course of the show. Chase B says, the Eagles are as good, if not better. Just think it's the Lions' year. I think the Lions look really good. If you want to make a case that the Lions look like a team of destiny, and you're a big Dan Campbell believer, I can't fault you. I think the Eagles versus Lions would be a hell of an NFC championship game. That's ultimately what I'm rooting for. I know that there are some people who are like, no, you want to see the best teams get knocked out. No, I'd like to see my team go up against the best the conference has to offer. Now, do I want to see Kansas City get to another Super Bowl? No. Do I think Kansas City is the best team in the AFC? They just have the winning DNA. Like, in theory, heads up, could the Ravens beat the Chiefs? Yes. Could the Bills beat the Chiefs? Yes. Will they? I don't bet against Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and that dynasty. I don't bet against them. Nope. It's to a lesser extent, right? I always say, as long as the Penguins have Crosby and Malkin, it's very hard for me to say that the Penguins are DED dead, right? Even if everything about recent history says that they are not a contending team, when you still have that kind of winning DNA, it's hard for me to pick against them. I don't want to see Kansas City get to the Super Bowl, but if they do, it'll mean that they were the best team coming out of the AFC. And in that case, if you're the Eagles and you can get some revenge, excellent. I did see, and I don't have it queued up here, but Jason Kelsey was on the WIP morning show, I believe, yesterday. And he was asked, what happens if the Eagles and the Chiefs meet in the Super Bowl? Who are you going to cheer for? And he said that he thinks that it's going to kind of be like how his mom had to handle it. But ultimately, he lives here. He played for the Eagles. He might not still be on the team, but he would still root for the Eagles, and he would root for his brother. Essentially, like, I hope both offenses go out and have a good game. And that he's going to feel good for whoever wins and also feel bad for whoever loses. So, there you go. Anyway, let's keep going. I see this thing by Obozo, and I'm a little bit worried. And I think he's talking about Joy Taylor as the second part, and we're just not going to bring it up. I'm not playing that game today. Absolutely not. The Joy Taylor thing was enough. Ford also points out the prognosticators are picking Ravens to play the Lions. That'd be a hell of a Super Bowl. But I really do think that the Eagles are going to make it there in the NFC. Okay. Last thing before we go. And it's not going to be a super long topic because, again, I've got to run to this dentist appointment that I'm fearful of, even though I like my dentist. If you're a Flyers fan, this weekend is maybe the last thing that you have to look forward to this season. I'm not trying to be a defeatist here. I'm not trying to be a pessimist, okay? But I broke down on Wednesday's show this idea that there is a growing frustration among a larger segment of the fan base than I think the Flyers might have expected all to happen at this point. But there's a lot of frustration about whether or not the Flyers are going to actually do anything to help accelerate the rebuild, i.e. make some deals. Are the Flyers going to look at trading Rasmus Ristolainen or Scott Lawton or Morgan Frost? Could there be other names involved? Could a Joel Farabee get moved? There aren't a lot of things to look forward to in this season. The goaltending has been very bad. Now, last night, Jamie Drysdale was almost solely responsible for the first 2 goals scored by Dallas. Jamie Drysdale looks horrible. Like, there is no way on this earth, none, that you can make a case right now that the Flyers benefited, at least from the player perspective, of trading Cutter Gauthier for Jamie Drysdale. That ain't even on the table right now. Gauthier has not lit up the world by any stretch in Anaheim, but he's still young. Drysdale's still young as well, but Drysdale looks like dog shit. There's no saving this player this season. Like, I asked Bundy during the intermission shows last night, like, I'm not even thinking about, like, for his career, but just this season, can they at least turn him into a salvageable player? He doesn't even look like capable of that. People are like, oh, well, the skating. What about his ability on the power play? Could he at least contribute there? No, he can't. He looks lost, dazed, and confused. If you didn't like Shane Gostisbehere, right? Like, let's just say conceptually, you're like, oh, Ghost pisses me off because he's a PowerPoint specialist but sucks at even strength. Drysdale's that, except he's not even that dangerous on the power play. He looks lost. He's often flat-footed. He's late to react to things. He doesn't even look like an NHL defenseman at this point. Like, truthfully, there are times that I watch Jamie Drysdale play and I think, wow, we're stuck with... Emile Andre got sent down. Helga Grant got sent down. And we have to watch this shit? And like, for a team that preaches culture and the meritocracy and you earn every minute you play, Drysdale isn't earning his playing time right now. He looks bad. Now, did he play a little bit better in the second and the third period than the first? Sure. But that's a very low bar, a ridiculously low bar. Because again, Drysdale was responsible for the first 2 goals in the game. Like, almost solely. Sam Harrison didn't exactly light the world on fire last night, but coming off of a couple of weeks of not playing, coming off his 3rd lower body injury, probably groin, of the season, he played okay. And in the 2 prior games, Ivan Fedotov held Toronto to 3 goals at Toronto and at home. Kolosov still doesn't belong up here. That's neither here nor there. Who will be in net on Saturday? Will they go back to Ersson, which I think would be very problematic, especially if he gets hurt again. If he does, you shut him down for the season. Will they go back to Fedotov, who had 2 good games against Toronto? Will they try to mix Alexei Kolosov back in? I don't know. Here's what I do know. Cutter Gauthier is coming back to town on Saturday. And we've never gotten the clear, decisive, definitive answer for why Cutter Gauthier didn't want to play in Philadelphia. And I don't know if we ever will get the answer. I can tell you that last year, when the trade went down, I happened to see the message. A message that kind of resonated pretty loudly. It was one of at least a few, but one message specifically that did in fact imply that Kevin Hayes was potentially involved with the clouding of the mind, we'll say, of Cutter Gauthier, or at least affecting his perception of the team, the organization. I think that from a much, much more macro level, the thing that good chance affected his desire or lack thereof to play there was that he wanted a guaranteed spot. He wanted to have a spot on the roster last year, and the Flyers said no. He wanted to be able to come in at the end of the college season and play a few games for the Flyers, and they said no, that's just bad business. We're not burning a year of your ELC. It also needs to be pointed out that the guy who drafted him was jettisoned. It also needs to be pointed out that the guy who really was his liaison from a player perspective, the guy that both said he had the communication with, was Kevin Hayes. And that at some point, Kevin Hayes went from being a guy who had an A on his sweater to not. You can take all of those little bits and pieces and put them together in a little shit Sunday if you want. But whatever it was that turned Gauthier against being a Flyer, that turned him from being a young guy who was interviewed shortly after the draft, or maybe it was the following summer, who essentially said that he met Tortorella and they had a really good interaction and that he is excited to play for him, he's excited to be a Flyer, all that. Whatever changed doesn't really matter right now. What matters is the guy ultimately wanted out. And in an unprecedented move, he was given that opportunity to be moved at a very young age before he had ever played a game in the NHL. Anaheim was more than willing to burn a year of his ELC for a single game last year. He has not exactly looked fantastic this season, but again, he's a young forward, and they take time to develop. But what he is about to have rained down on him in Philadelphia is something that you just cannot expect. When Cutter Gauthier decided that he didn't want to play here anymore, he didn't expect to get the kind of backlash that he got, because he probably didn't expect Dan Hilferty to come on the Press Row show and say to us that if he doesn't want to be here, we don't want him here. And that when he comes back to Philadelphia, he's going to be in for a rude awakening. Probably didn't expect that. Probably didn't expect Danny Briere to be as forthright as he was the night of the trade, where he said the kid didn't want to play here, and eventually we had to make a deal before that became widely known across the entire league. It was like if Gauthier had hoped that the Flyers were just going to say, oh, we thought this was a really great trade for this wonderful young defenseman, Jamie Drysdale, and didn't think that Gauthier didn't think that they were going to like kind of kick him in the teeth or in the ass on the way out the door, he was sorely mistaken. This fan base hates Cutter Gauthier. And like, I don't have a good comp for it, right? Because you could go back to like J.D. Drew. You can go back to Scott Rowland. I don't know who the best comp is, but what I can tell you is Flyers fans can be a petty bunch. Philadelphia fans in general can be a petty bunch. And if you're Cutter Gauthier and you come into town on Saturday and you think that this is going to be anything other than war, I am so sorry to inform you, it is going to be the worst night of your life. It will absolutely be the worst night of your professional and or overall hockey career. This fan base is going to rip you to shreds. You are going to hear profanity and slander from fans that you wouldn't wish upon your worst enemy. And in fact, I would guarantee you that there are going to be a few one-finger salutes coming from the Flyers faithful. You're going to see small children giving the one-finger salute to Cutter Gauthier, who after the game just may be broken as a human being. It'll be interesting to see what his body language is after the game. Now, just based on Philadelphia sports fandom and history, Gauthier will probably have like a hat trick or have a 3-point night, and the goalies will look bad, and maybe Gauthier will embarrass Jamie Drysdale. What would ultimately be the biggest punch to the nutsack in the history of, at least the recent history of the Flyers, is if Gauthier flat out embarrasses Jamie Drysdale and pots a goal. That would be bad. Okay? What would be even worse is if he does it against Alexei Kolosov, who for some reason is still up here and has effectively been guaranteed a spot on this roster despite the fact that he should be down in the AHL developing. And then you could kind of point out the hypocrisy perhaps of not guaranteeing your top North American prospect a spot on the roster, but you keep this young Belarusian goalie who doesn't belong at this level. That would be your worst case scenario. If there's one thing that Danny Briere and Keith Jones probably would like to avoid, it's Cutter Gauthier embarrassing Jamie Drysdale and potting a goal against Alexei Kolosov, which is why I don't think Kolosov will be in net tomorrow. They can't do shit about Drysdale. He looks bad. There's just nothing they can do. Except maybe bench him. But can you imagine the optics loss if they bench Jamie Drysdale against his former team? Like, they can't do it. I am still convinced the big reason why Jamie Drysdale is still in the lineup is the PR hit. They cannot afford to have Jamie Drysdale sitting in the press box as the guy who was the centerpiece of the Gauthier trade. They just can't. And they certainly can't afford it tomorrow. Now, if you're the Flyers, do you perhaps find an injury that Jamie Drysdale has been nursing or playing through to try to give plausible deniability and say he has an upper body injury instead of just being a healthy scratch? I don't know. But I'll tell you what, there's almost no chance Drysdale looks good tomorrow. And there's a better than zero chance that Gauthier looks at least like a passable pro. But we'll see. I am excited for Saturday night. I'm obviously even more excited for Sunday night as the Eagles take on the Packers. And I see there are a lot of comments over here, and usually this is a point in the show where I go back to the comments and everything, but I do need to head out of here. But Obozo calls Drysdale the new Nolan Patrick, meaning that he's a bust. Allison says, what is the likelihood they win on Saturday? How much will the fans be pissed if they lose? Fans are going to be pissed if they lose. They're especially going to be pissed if Gauthier is a positive in the game. Like if Gauthier contributes to a win, the boos will very quickly rain down on the Flyers. Let me see if I can get to anything else here. Landrew says, I think Drysdale was better later on in the game. Shouldn't be playing over Andre. He was better in the second and third. But again, when you're solely responsible for the first two goals of the game, it's not exactly a high bar. Emile Andre should be up here. Helga Grans, I could even say, probably should get another look at some point. Connor Allen asks, does William Cutter have this game circled on his calendar? It's funny because when they played in Anaheim, he said that this was a game that he had circled on his calendar, that the one in Anaheim, and then he had a big old 0 points in that one. Linda Joseph says, Drysdale is a symptom of a bigger issue, and that is this organization cannot develop homegrown D-men. Every all-star D-man this team has had in the last 40 years has been traded or signed. Provorov was the guy that like they really had high hopes for. They played until the wheels fell off, and he just wasn't that guy. All right, with that, I'm going to end the show for today. If you're a pro wrestling fan, I dropped a new It's Just Wrestling. I'll put the logo up here in the corner for a second. This is the logo that you're looking for. It's available wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music. I might not have actually put it in the podcast feeds there last night. I need to do that this morning if I haven't already. But it is available over on YouTube, X, and Facebook. Go subscribe to it. Broke down Raw on Netflix. Broke down a mess of a Rock promo on Monday, a backtracking on Tuesday, and then whatever AEW Dynamite was this Wednesday. I was very hot and cold on it. So if you're a pro wrestling fan, go check that show out. We'll be back on Saturday for the Press Row Show on the Snow the Goalie channels. So make sure if you haven't done so already, you go subscribe to Snow the Goalie wherever you get your podcasts. Dropped a bonus episode from pregame the other night with Adam Kimmelman where he broke down how the Flyers prospects looked at World Juniors. And I'm actually going to take last night's pregame segment that had John LeClaire on the show. He got into working with Matt Mishkov, talking more about coaching him, about working with him, about the Fire, about what LeClaire believes is going to be a future star in this league. So I promise it'll be worth checking out. But until Monday, this has been the Russ Joy Show, and I've been Russ Joy, but you knew that already because you're smart and it's also the name of the show. Talk to all of you Monday. Let's hope the Eagles have a great game on Sunday, and we get to look to the next round. If not, I'll be here anyway. And it's going to be a very interesting show. It'll be interesting either way. Make sure you come back. Like this video, share the video, subscribe. I'll talk to all of you Monday here on The Russ Joy Show. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Talk to you soon.